Hi, everyone. Welcome to our recording this week. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. All right. And talk about what we will be covering this week in class. All right. In class this week, we are covering Chapter 12, which talks about protecting your business, things like insurance and then we're also going to be talking about the future of your company and how you plan for the future development, growth of your company. All right, so this week we have a recorded lecture here, and I'd like you to read chapter 12 in your text and review the PowerPoint. I will review the PowerPoint here as well. And then there's a discussion that I'd like you to make a main reply to by Thursday, February 11th, and a reply to a classmate by the 14th. Please make sure you reply to that discussion, and this reply to your discussion will help in completing your next portion of your business plan, which is the future development portion of your business plan. Also due this week is a short insurance assignment that is here, the Dropbox. And if you click into the Dropbox here, there's a document where I have a couple of questions. I'll go ahead and share that with you. If you open that document, you'll see here we have a few questions. I want you to, we're going to go over today a slideshow, and on slide 3 of the chapter 12 PowerPoint, I want you to look at the different types and ideas or types of insurance to get a couple of ideas for insurance that you will need to purchase for your business. We'll talk about it a bit more, and I will highlight some of the things that some of the insurance that will be useful for businesses. And then I want you to talk about why you picked those particular types of insurances. And then I want you to just research a bit, like let's say you chose, business theft insurance or something along those lines, talk about where you would go to purchase that type of insurance and what type of items it would cover. So I just want you to have a paragraph or two telling how you researched about that type of insurance. And if possible, see if you can come up with a potential quote for that type of insurance. I don't want to require that because some insurance companies, they'll start requiring your phone number and things like that. And will start, soliciting you to purchase their insurance. So, but if you can research the cost, that would be ideal because it'll give you an idea of what it will cost when you open your business. And also, like I said, I just want a few things about the insurance, where you can purchase it, and some of the items that it would cover. All right, so that's the insurance assignment for this week. Let me go ahead and go back to our class here. All right, so that is week 6 of our class. Just the discussion with a post due Thursday and Sunday, a reply due by Sunday, and then our 2 assignments here. Let me go ahead and before we move to our slideshow, I'll just go ahead and click in here to the future development portion of your business plan. That's your other assignment. Let me go ahead and open that. And for this, again, it's very similar to the discussion we're doing this week. We're going to talk a little bit about planning for the future of your business. It is important because you may have a business and all of a sudden it starts growing and you're not sure what to do, or maybe it was really big, but you need to scale it back. Or maybe, you want to grow your business by getting another location. And so I want you to write approximately 1-page double-spaced paper addressing the following items. What are your specific goals for your company in the next year? Is it to just be, you're the only employee and to just get it off the ground? Um, or are you expecting to be, fully open restaurant with 20 employees? Where do you want your company to be in 3 to 5 years? Are you just going to keep one restaurant, for instance, or are you going to try to open restaurants in the neighboring communities? How big do you want your company to grow? Again, you can look even further in the future for 10 years. And then what are the potential risks facing your company? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Uh, Mainly, we'll talk about insurance, but we are also going to talk about other types of risks. New competition coming along, potential lawsuits, cybersecurity risks, employee theft risks. How are you going to minimize or plan for these types of risks? And then what is your exit strategy for the company? And this assumes that you're not going to always want to run your business or you'll eventually want to retire. Are you going to try to sell your business? Are you just going to close it? Are you going to pass it on to a family member or a friend or bring in a partner and they'll take it over? What's your exit strategy for your company? It's important because if you're going to plan to sell it, let's say for money when you retire, how are you going to make it marketable to be able to sell your company? If you want to pass it on to a family member, are you going to bring them on, sometime in that time frame to, start having them learn the business? What happens if they decide they don't want the business? So just some future planning and future thinking. In a business plan, this is important because if someone's planning on investing in your business, they know, okay, they're planning on growing the business, or they just, they have a plan for their current business and they're going to be happy with it, as let's say a sole proprietorship or just a very small business. It gives the reader of your business plan a little more idea about, what the goals are for your business. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to that screen there. Those are the assignments for the week. And again, just re-emphasize here that the discussion for this week has very similar questions. So you'll kind of have a good start on that assignment. There, the discussion question concentrates on, how big you're going to have your business and are, if you're going to, when are you going to decide to hire employees if you're a sole proprietor, or more employees if you're a small business? What's going to dictate if you're going to open a new location or dictate the size of your company. But a main thing to think about when thinking about how big you want to grow your business is, are you going to be willing to turn away customers instead of expanding? Are you okay telling customers that, hey, our restaurant fits 20 people or 20 tables, and, I'm glad people like our food and there's just going to be a wait list, or, are you willing to do that because you feel like the business is big enough and you don't maybe want to grow your business? There's just things to think about there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start our presentation. I wanted to present a bit to you from chapter 12 here. Let me make sure it's sharing this correctly. Okay. Chapter 12 is all about protecting your baby, which is your company, and you need to protect yourself as well, your personal assets. And with this comes, possibly buying insurance, looking at, how you're going to protect yourself against crime, taxes. An exit strategy, again, is what happens when your business ends, when you decide to retire or you need to move on, and just overall ethics. All right, so insurance and managing risk. Insurance pretty much is a way for you to manage your risk. You buy car insurance, it is the law, but it's also to minimize the risk if you get in a car accident that, you'll have help paying for damages or injuries. So when you're looking at insurance for a business, you need to identify the risks that your business faces. And by that, I mean, um, the risks a company is going to face. We actually really talked about some of those. You may have lawsuits. You may have things like employee theft. You might have natural disasters, flooding, tornadoes. Um, there's several different business risks that a business can face. And it's important for your specific business for you to identify those. It's going to vary with the business. A restaurant obviously could never have forecasted really a pandemic, but again, that was a risk they faced, I guess, was being shut down by a pandemic. So mostly what businesses do, and what I would suggest everyone do, is that you work with an insurance broker to determine what risks to insure and which to assume and which to share. So which risks are you willing to take on, and which risks do you need to insure? At my last job, I was in charge of the business insurance for the company, and we had like 20 different policies. And I would sit with the insurance agents like once or twice a year and sit with them and talk over the types of insurance we had and what they covered, and do we need to add more coverage to this type of insurance, or do we need to add this type of insurance? One type of insurance I did not purchase that they had suggested was what's called recall insurance, where if there was a food recall, then that would be insured. I chose not to cover that because the recall insurance had like a $50,000 deductible, and it only covered up to like 250,000 worth of um, coverage. And so, if a company would somehow be able to cover, let's say, the 200,000 that you potentially would gain by having this coverage, then maybe it's not worth having the insurance. Because, and I'll tell you why I chose not to take the insurance, the premium on the insurance was super high. I mean, I feel like it was like $25,000 a year or something. And then, like I said, it had this huge deductible, and it was like $25,000 a year. And anyway, so you have to really look at the insurance policies, what they cover, what they cost, what the deductibles are, to see if something did happen, would it actually cover it, and how much of that it would cover. All right, so you can check into group policies. That's where it's kind of like buying in bulk, where you buy as a group and it can help bring down prices. That's where an insurance broker can help you. And you want to consider the following. Again, I just talked about a lot of those: probability and size of a potential loss, financial resources. If you met that loss, can you just pay it out of pocket without having to worry about insurance? And probability of lawsuits, for instance. So you can reduce your risk, but you must also assume it's that don't risk more than you can tolerate losing. Yeah. So that's just a key thing to keep in mind. So don't risk your house, for instance, to put it up for your business if you're not going to be, willing to lose it. That's one good suggestion I can give to people is, putting up your house as collateral. Be very careful about that for anything. Okay, so different types of insurance. Here's some standard coverages. Fire and general property insurance is one you might want to consider if you're going to be having any sort of actual physical location for your business. Even a food cart should probably have fire and general property insurance on it. Yeah, any sort of physical location, you would want to have that. Okay, here's some others. Consequential loss insurance, that tends to relate to, like, if you had an event, let's say, that made your food cart burnt down, and not only did you lose your food cart, but you lost the business that you would have had while the food cart's being fixed. That could fall under consequential loss insurance because you lose that business that happened. Public liability insurance would be maybe like if somebody got hurt on your restaurant property, that could maybe cover that. let's see here, business interruption insurance. That's another one that if something shut down your business, I doubt that the pandemic was covered in here, but let's say now that this has happened, insurance companies might start try to sell that type of insurance. But if something were to interrupt your business, such as the pandemic, you could maybe insure it for that. So let's say they were closed for a month, business interruption insurance would cover that month, and maybe say they pay them the average of a month of um, what their business would have made during that month they had to close. Again, I don't think business interruption insurance, you have to really make sure you read the fine print that it covers, what you need it to cover. I don't know if businesses have been able to claim that the pandemic closures on there or not. Probably depends on their policy. Crime insurance, again, you have to look into the specific coverage, but that could be, protecting against like break-ins or theft. Malpractice insurance would be common for a business that offers services, especially. So, like a doctor, a dentist, a chiropractor. Errors and omissions insurance. We had that at my last job. That was if for some reason, like your accountant, or any of your accounting department or other employees as well, made an egregious error or omission that led to a loss. I know at my last job, fortunately, it wasn't our fault, but we used a payroll processing company. It was a national chain one, and they didn't figure out our Washington workers' comp insurance correctly, and they had been under withholding it. And then all of a sudden, because they were the people paying our taxes, the state of Washington contacted them and said, you owe us $67,000. And the state of Washington took it out of this payroll company's bank account because they were the ones we paid to do our payroll taxes. And then in turn, then this payroll company was like, oops, we under withheld from you all, and we need the $67,000 now. And they went and took it out of our account. And we didn't have $67,000 just laying in an account at that moment, because this was like months and months of them under withholding our taxes. It wasn't like a one-time thing. It was over, let's say, a period of like 6 to 9 months. Anyway, they ended up having to eat a lot of that. Well, we were able to pay them back some, but they ate a lot of it. And yeah, that was huge. So that would be like an error and omission potentially that they might have claimed to their insurance. And maybe that's why they didn't end up collecting the rest of it. Because yeah, I told them, call me to work out a plan, and they said they would call, and they never did. And anyway, like I said, they may have claimed that on the insurance because the company did admit that it was their employee's fault. All right, and then there's employment practices liability insurance. Again, you'd have to look into that, but there may be specific employment practices that could lead to some liability. The company I worked for also had key person insurance. That's where you have life insurance for like the owner. That way, if something happened to the owner, I think we had a few $1,000,000 or something. If the owner were to just, get in, die or something, that there was that money to be able to continue the business, because he was a big part of the business. Product liability insurance, that could be, in case your product ended up being defective and, you got sued over that. Disability insurance would be where you cover either yourself, like in case you become disabled and you can no longer run your business, or a big company could offer disability insurance to their employees in case they became disabled and couldn't work. It's an insurance policy for that. Another type of insurance would be health insurance for employees. Got to have employees for that. Workers' compensation insurance is required by states. And again, that's another one that you got to have employees for. But if any of you are even having one employee, you're going to need workers' compensation insurance. Extra equipment insurance, like if you have a big fancy piece of equipment, you may want to insure that. Directors and officers liability insurance, that's if, your directors or officers ended up, um, making an egregious error that, caused damages. Um, Cybercrime, that would be like if someone went in and maybe, uh, hacked into your system and stole either money or like all of your customers' information, and then you had to go and try and clean up that mess and make sure your customers weren't getting scammed or stolen from. And then another one is vehicle insurance. That was another one I had at the company I worked for. Um, that they had any sort of company vehicle has to have vehicle insurance. Anytime you have a company vehicle, um, you need to have that. And our vehicle insurance also covered employees who drove their own vehicles. If they were on work time and they had an accident or something on work time, then our vehicle insurance policy covered that. So lots of different types of insurance to look into. Again, it depends on your business. A little small food cart would, like I said, need fire and general property insurance. If you're like selling online, um, on Amazon, for instance, possibly you could have a product liability insurance, or you might, have disability insurance for yourself or health insurance for yourself. So some of you that have the really small business ideas, think of things that you might buy for yourself because you're self-employed. Yeah. All right. Employee crime, be prepared. All right. So one thing that can happen, and there is an insurance policy on this one. Where was it? I guess it's not specifically stated that way, but there's like, you have to look under the different types of policies, but you can have like, um, insurance to insure your business against employee theft. Um, that could maybe fall under employment practices liability insurance, maybe. Again, you could maybe look up employee theft protection insurance. But 30% of small business failures are attributed to employee theft. I've done bookkeeping in this county and, accounting, and I can vouch for that. I have seen a couple of small businesses basically go out of business, or, yeah, actually, I've seen at least two directly that I know of that went out of business due to employee theft. So you need to make sure that, especially in a small business, that you're prepared to try and prevent both internal and external theft and crime. There's external crime too, with break-ins and theft of, outsiders as well. Um, Insurers offer specialists to work with industry-specific issues. So that's where I was saying it does depend on your type of business. Some businesses might have to have credit card fraud protection, check, computer fraud, uh, you know, but think of all these different examples of ways that a company might need to protect themselves. Theft of items from the stockroom, layaways and displays, shoplifting, cybercrime, cash mishandling. Those are a couple of that I knew of were cash mishandling, like people just stealing from the cash register. And, um, because it was a small business and there was, say, one manager on duty, they just said they were having bad, days of business. And the business owner just figured business wasn't going well, but really it was people pocketing money. So that's a big one that I see. Shoplifting is obviously, a big one if you have a store. Um, Theft of items from the stockroom, layaways, and displays. I worked at a Taco Bell when I was in high school, and we were in a university, so we were in a college student union area, and so we also sold other items besides Subway or besides Taco Bell. We also had sandwiches we sold in like a separate area and desserts. And so we made brownies every day from scratch out of this mix. And all of a sudden, people were stealing like 20-pound bags of brownie mix out of our storeroom. And so some strange things can disappear because it may be easier for people to think that they could take those and maybe they won't be noticed, or they're in a back room, so it's super easy to get them out the back door. I don't want anybody to think that you have to constantly think people are thieves or going to commit crimes, but I also want people to be prepared to deal with some of these so that, because it could bring your entire business down. Like I said, I knew two people that had business managers running their businesses that stole over, let's say a period of 6 months, and it pretty much put them under, because then they found it out and had to fire the person. And then they were already in a lot of financial trouble because their business, their finances were being stolen. But again, that's just one example. I've also seen, illegal use of company time, where people are on the clock and they're not really working. Fraudulent expense reports. I've seen that one happen a lot, where people put in that, they had a business dinner for $500 and, they really didn't, or those kind of things. So all kinds of things to be aware of. Not all of them can get prevented, but some of them you can either buy insurance against or do your best to prevent them. All right, so credit card fraud, specifically 5 ways you can protect your business, is credit card frauds when someone uses a card that's not theirs. So you want to make sure that, just some things that look suspect. One is to be wary of orders that use a different bill to and ship to address. People that have unusually large next day delivery orders, so then they get the stuff before someone might find out about the credit card. You want to do as much as you can to validate the order, as far as the name and seeing the card and the security code. And if you do discover fraud, take as quick action as you can. What I find is usually it's the vendor that gets stuck with the bill. I worked at my last company and they would get, people would dispute charges on their credit card. And sometimes I think they just didn't recognize, oh yeah, that they actually bought stuff from our company because of the way that it printed on their credit card statement, the vendor name. Other times I thought people were actually just out and out trying to steal, like telling their credit card companies, I didn't buy those 20, Dungeness crab. I don't know who did it. And I feel like that was a little bit of it, was the people actually used their own card, but then just rejected the charges. But I'm sure some of them were also out and out people stealing the credit cards. But either way, the money got taken from our business unless we could prove that that person made the actual charge. And so you want to make sure that it's valid as much as you can, because it's usually the business that loses. And that might be another one you need to insure against, those type of losses, if they're big enough. Cyber concerns are big nowadays. Again, you want to make sure you're always protecting your customers' personal information and data. There's software you can have that helps to lock things down a little bit more. Train your employees to make sure that they're not sharing that information, and just stay up to date with the issues, because I'm sure most of you have seen, there's been like a motel that all of a sudden all the credit card information got hacked into and stolen, and that is a black mark on that hotel. I think that happened to Target a couple of years ago too, and so then people are like, well, maybe I don't want to shop at Target anymore. So just and then another way to kind of cut your risks down is to hire carefully. That's hard to, you want to hire honest people, I guess. And so you just need to be very careful in your selection and hiring of employees. And, if you are suspect of someone, that you follow up on it. And this is a case where you might consider cybercrime liability insurance. All right, so 10 cybersecurity tips for a small business. I'll just leave this up here, a couple to highlight, training employees, and limiting, number 9, limiting employees' access to data. I think that's good. You don't want to, as few people that have access to the information leads to less, availability for it to get taken. Um, but yeah, oh yeah, and a firewall or security protection is another good way to do that. Uh, yeah, so there's some other tips there as well. IRS tax publications. So we're onto the tax man. We talked about a couple of credit card fraud and cyber crimes, things that a business needs to worry about. Um, the tax man is another one. Also, one where I have seen small businesses struggle and get themselves into a lot of trouble is maybe not understanding their taxes and not doing them correctly, and amassing fines or penalties. Um, so the IRS does have publications called tax guides for small businesses and starting a business and keeping records. For any of you that decide to go forward and start your business, I highly suggest looking that up, especially if you're going to have employees, because there's more records that you need and taxes for that. And make sure that you consider state taxes as well as federal taxes. Um, income taxes for both state and federal. And if you're self-employed, you pay self-employment taxes. If you're hiring employees, you're going to have employment taxes that you pay. And in states that have sales taxes, you have sales taxes that you have to pay. And I can tell you, I worked in Washington and we had sales tax reports we needed to file monthly. And they didn't look too kindly if you didn't turn those in on time with your payment. They were calling literally right after they were late. I remember on one of them, it was just a transmission error. My return, for whatever reason, didn't get transmitted. And I thought that it had, I had a confirmation code, but they said, oh, you were supposed to go one more step. And I'm like, really? Past the confirmation code? And they were like, yeah. And so I was able to get out of that fine. But yeah, they're huge fines for any sort of violations of these. So you need to make sure you know which taxes you're liable for your company, and what are the requirements for paying them and the due dates for them. All right, exit strategy. We talked about that a little bit in your assignment and your discussion. Your exit strategy is, the continuance of your business depends on your goals. Are you just going to run your business until you die? Or, is it something you want to pass on to family? Or is it something that you think you're going to sell down the road? And it could change, your life changes and it can happen. But it's good to have just a general plan and to go with that plan. And if things change, they change. But and with an exit strategy, you would likely want to work with lawyers and accountants. I say that as well. I believe I mentioned this before, but when you start a business, we did mention having a lawyer on your side and maybe available for some of the setup of your business to make sure it gets set up legally and properly. Same with an accountant. If you're going to do your own bookkeeping, that's fine, but it's still good to have an accountant for probably your yearly tax forms, and maybe for some of your other tax related questions or business setup questions. And then, as we talked about earlier in this PowerPoint, really having an insurance broker should be on your team too, because they can tell you what types of insurance you might need and how much it would cost and what it would cover. And a last thought here with an exit strategy is to consider an employee stock ownership plan if you want to share your business with your employees. So maybe your exit plan is that, employees are able to buy stock in the business and maybe one day you won't be part of the business, but you'll have all these employee owners. So that's a thought too in an exit strategy. Just some ethical considerations here. You're going to come up with many ethical issues that happen in business. That's one reason, our 2-year degree programs require an ethics class. That class kind of sees it from a different lens. But again, you're going to run into ethical issues throughout business. And, it's going to affect everybody. And here's a thought: passion for silence and helping people with disabilities. What goes around comes around. I guess the idea is, if you treat people well, you will be treated well. And if you don't treat people well, what goes around comes around. Anyway, I guess that's just a good thought in regards to ethics. And that's similar to the golden rule of treating others as you would want to be treated. And a good test here when you're determining the ethical nature of a situation is this 4-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair? Again, fair can be a little subjective, but think of what you would think if it was fair. And will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? And if you're answering no to any of those, you have to step back and look at the ethical nature of this. All right, 7-step path to better decisions as a business owner or, even an employee. You're going to step into situations where you have to make decisions on the spot or, be stuck in an ethical, an ethical dilemma. So here we go. Stop and think. What are our goals here? Determine, okay, what do I know? What are the facts? What are my options? What are the consequences if I take option 1, option 2, option 3? And then hopefully once we've considered all those, we're at a point where we can choose the appropriate option. If it doesn't work, maybe modify your decision or your path. You're going to have to make decisions all the time in business, and this is a good pathway for that and a way to protect your business. Some other think points for success: protect your investment with insurance. It depends on the size of your business, but insurance cost-wise, I think is worth it. Especially if it protects you from, like $1 million lawsuit that could happen because someone breaks their leg in front of your food cart because you spilled some, oil out of your fryer there and you didn't get it wiped up before they fell. Who knows? But things happen. Reduce the risk of employee theft and crime with loss prevention strategies. Maybe a camera. I'm not really that excited about cameras, but that's one way to try and reduce employee theft. Find and hire an expert accountant and financial advisor. Again, even if you're going to do the accounting on your own for your business, you could still maybe have an accountant that you could just call to for, if you had a question that there was something that you didn't know about. Pay your taxes on time. Very, very important. Again, that's another one where I know several businesses that pretty much went under over not paying taxes. And that is, too bad. Maybe in some cases they just couldn't afford them, but in other cases it was just not knowing the proper procedure to get them turned in on time. And then the fees and interest, accrues to get to where it's not affordable. Keep impeccable, organized records. They will help you survive an audit and enhance your ability to sell your business. Love it. Yeah, if you get audited and they ask you for a receipt and you produce it right away, you're going to look like your business is, organized and that you have nothing to hide. It would also enhance your ability to sell the business. Plan your exit strategy. And finally, again, follow the golden rule. All right, so I like this chapter. It is kind of unique in talking about a little bit about future planning, a little bit about modifying and assessing your risks and insurance, and overall just a great chapter to bring about some of these issues um, in a business that you'll want to just consider and think about before you um, have your final start of your business uh, in place and actually as you run your business. Okay, so we are moving on our way with our business plans. It's been a lot of fun seeing them evolve throughout these weeks. So if you have any questions or concerns, let me know. Otherwise, I will be having a video next week and I'll see you there.